So the announcement I was going to start with is that this is actually a 10 o'clock Bible study class for First Christian Church of Wilton Manors. It's a small church, country-style church near our home. It's where we've been attending for more than 30 years, Marcia and myself, my wife and I. And we've enjoyed it here. And a couple weeks ago they had what they call decorating for greens or hanging the greens. It's where they took the two services. They have a service before this class at 8:30 and one after this class at 11 o'clock. And this is between the two church services. And at that time, they combined the services for a 10 o'clock service in the church sanctuary to help decorate and read scriptures about the Messiah. And this Sunday is Christmas coming up this coming Sunday. They're going to do the same thing again. So we won't have class next Sunday. The 10 o'clock service will be in the sanctuary. I want to invite anybody from Fort Lauderdale area to come join us for 10 o'clock next Sunday. It's at First Christian Church of Wilton Manors. So that's an announcement that I wanted to make. And then the following week we'll be back again with class. Think about having a lesson, it was Christmas of Jesus' first coming, and then we'll focus on his second coming. But this class, we're going to follow up with the third class on the Great Tribulation. So this is the third and final class on the Great Tribulation. We're going to look at the Antichrist and his role during that time. We do know that the beast is actually a government. It was around before the Antichrist. The Antichrist takes over the government. He becomes the head of that government, the mouthpiece of that government, the identity of that government. So he's a very important part of that government. But the beast is bigger than the Antichrist. They're not equal as far as exact one as the other. So we're going to go ahead and go with the scriptures of Daniel 11. So let's start out with Daniel 11, verse 41. We're going to see that the beast is very powerful. He's listed a lot in Daniel in different forms, different times throughout Daniel, as well as Revelation. And the Antichrist is very powerful, who takes over the beast. And we're going to see that he's not all powerful, though. He's not ruling the whole world. There's places that escape from him, and he has a limited amount of time. His time of actually being in the limelight is about 7 years, and only the last 3.5 years he really becomes worse than ever. And so it's divided in two parts, the Great Tribulation. Right in the middle, things happen where it seems like the beast has been wounded with a sword. I believe it's a sword of truth, partly by the two witnesses as well as others being evangelized. He can't stand against truth because he's full of deception. And that wound's being healed by the false prophet coming on board. And two witnesses being killed, probably by the false prophet. And the false prophet doing some of the same miracles that the two witnesses do, such as call down fire from heaven. So the false prophet becomes very powerful. And he institutes the mark of the beast. We find that that is actually a deceptive mark. If anybody takes that mark, they're doomed, because it's a brainwashing mark. It'll deceive people, and the only people that are deceived will take it, have already rejected the truth. So they have a chance to receive the truth, but they've rejected it. And then they receive the mark of the beast to buy and sell in their thinking. But it also is a brainwashing mark, where they can never receive the truth after that. They'll never receive Jesus Christ. But let's look at Daniel 11:41. We'll see there's whole nations that do receive Jesus Christ. They do honor him as a king and have their names written in the Lamb's Book of Life. And so the Antichrist is fighting against these people. And so he's not ruling the whole world, but he does dominate the whole world. So let's look at Daniel 11:41. By the way, this is a time that we'll never experience, and it's a long time from now. We've seen that in earlier classes. And we're looking at a timeline of where the church is from here to the new heaven and new earth, and all the things that are going to take place in the midst of all them that time. So who'd like to read Daniel 11:41?
He will also invade the beautiful land. Many countries will fall, but Edom, Moab, and
Okay, so there's three countries right there around Israel, and as the King James put it, escape from him. And as that translation puts it, are delivered from him. And he's entering at this time, this is in the middle of the tribulation, and he's entering Jerusalem area, Israel area. This is where he's going to set up his new campsite, basically. His new temple, or not a new temple, but his new base of headquarters. He takes over the temple that's already been existing for more than 100 years. He doesn't build a temple, as some people assume. But anyways, so there's places in the whole nations that are not under his control. And if you're not under his control, he has no power to enforce the mark to buy and sell, because his economy doesn't work. Just like I can't take a Russian ruble and go to Walmart's and spend it here. It's not going to spend. It's not our currency. You have to be with the government's currency and the government's authority to enforce that currency. So his authority to enforce the mark of the beast is only found where he is actually making the rules. He's actually in charge of what is bought and sold and things along that line. We talked about how you can't have somebody from Russia jump in our class and draft people saying, we want you to go to war and fight, because he has no authority here. So the bottom line is the Antichrist and the beast. The Antichrist only has authority of those within the beast. So let's take a look at Daniel 12:1. We see that he's invading the promised land of Israel, Jerusalem, where the two prophets have died now and been resurrected and are in heaven. And let's take a look at Daniel 12:1.
And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at the time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book.
Written in the book means that they're Christians. Much of Israel will become, their eyes will be open and they'll become Christians. And we'll see that especially by the time of the end of the Great Tribulation, everybody's going to be either in the book or rejecting the book of life, Jesus Christ. And you're going to be saved or not saved. That's the case now. But bottom line is there's nobody walking the fence. We basically committed one way or the other. Now, this is where Israel goes to Petra, a special place. And we see that in Revelations 12:5 and 6. And there's a place that's prepared for Israel. So even though the Antichrist takes over their nation as a country, as a place, he doesn't take over their people. Their people escape. So it's a lot like Hitler in a sense of coming in and taking over. But in a sense, they might see it coming. But when this happens, they know it's time to just get out of there. Don't even go get another thing out of the house. Just flee. And they're going to have an ability to do so. And they're going to go quickly. And we won't go into all the details of all these things. But let's look at Revelations 12:5 through 6.
And she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up unto God, unto his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days.
So the woman is Israel. The man-child is Jesus. This is well before the Great Tribulation. This is 2,000 years ago, basically, when Jesus first came to this earth. And so it's talking about that country. That's the man-child. And now, it's sometime later, and they're in a Great Tribulation, worst time in history, worst time that'll ever be in history. This is the pinnacle of tribulation. It'll never be this bad ever again, never be that bad ever before. So these 3.5 years period now that we're speaking of it'll be seen in all history as the worst it could ever get. The worst God would allow it, even though it's really bad now. It's a pinnacle of how sin can develop. Unless it's restricted, will completely destroy everything it touches. And this time frame is 3.5 years. So it's exactly the 3.5 year period, the last 3.5 years of the Great Tribulation. And the woman, she's fled into the wilderness to a place that's already prepared, a place called Petra. They know about the place now. It's actually well fortified. And the Antichrist just has bigger fish to fry than chase him down at that point. And so that's what he will do. But it's interesting how we've often been an ally to Israel, continue to do so. And our country is going to go through some major changes. It's going to go through catastrophic changes during the Great Tribulation, I believe. We're going to see nuclear destruction in our country. But there may be things left in our country. There may be, I think there's going to be a future for our country. Our countries desperately need a revival, a great awakening at this point. But let's take a look at Revelations 12:14. This is a little tidbit. The wings of an eagle, maybe referring to speed, but it may be a little shadow of a secondary idea that the eagle and great wings may be representing us as a nation, coming to Israel's aid. It wouldn't be the first time. I think it's very possible this would be another time, an additional time, that maybe the United States comes to Israel's aid in the midst of this conflict. We'll see there's nothing that denies that, but you can't emphatically say that that's us. But I think the impressions are very well could be. So Revelations 12:14, because people say the United States is not mentioned in prophecy. Well, there's a lot of things that are not mentioned in prophecy. That doesn't mean they're not going to happen. They don't play a part. So let's look at the 14th verse of the same chapter, Revelation chapter 12. Go ahead. You got a question?
This represents the U.S.?
I'm saying that it's possible. I think it's very possible. And it's my impression that it does. But that's my opinion. With prophecy, there's lots of opinions out there which kind of have a good, strong foundation. This is one of those things that's a little off the strong foundation. Everything that we talked about before is pretty much solid, undisputable if you see it. This is something that, well, this is a possibility, very strong possibility though. So let's look at this verse 14. You can make your own decision. I like to believe that because I mean this country is founded basically on the principles of God. And we'll see there's other things mentioned, but I don't believe we're the country at that time that we are now. I think our country, while I know, will be in great revival. There's no country outside of the Antichrist that is not in great revival. And so it'll be a much more godly country than it is now. And it may be much more devastated than it is now. But it won't be a nuclear or military stronghold anymore. That'll be diminished greatly. Let's look at that 14th verse and let's read that.
And to the woman were
Nice and loud, please. Nice and loud, please. For the,
nice and loud.
sorry.
And to the woman were given 2 wings of the great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time, and times, and half a time, from the face of the serpent.
So there we are. The times and a half, times 3.5 years. The great eagle, I believe, could be us, and helping Israel once again escape. Now we didn't really help them during World War II that well. We turned them away. So hopefully that's well, it's going to be people are either going to be for the Antichrist or after the Antichrist by this time. But let's take a look at what happens after this happens. After Israel is escaped to Petra. It's a place in the rocks, fortified, that they are able to get to and are preserved there. So look at the 17th verse 17 of the same chapter.
And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which kept the commandments of God, and have the testimony of Jesus Christ.
See, I think that's another reference to our country. That's going to be a country, and that's the reason why I think the Antichrist comes after us. Now, he's always been after us, but he's going to make war against the remnants of Israel, in a sense, spiritually speaking, Jesus Christ, and the ones that have their names written in the Lamb's Book of Life. So that's basically what he's busy doing. He's warring against others that have not received his leadership. Let's take a look at Daniel chapter 11. And we call them saints, because that's what God calls them. And their whole countries are considered saints. We was considered a godly country, but now we kind of more like a multi-god country, or sometimes considered a godless country these days. So let's take a look at Revelation or Daniel 7, verses 21 through 22. And whoever has that, go ahead and read that nice and loud.
Then I continued to watch because of the boastful words the horn was speaking. I kept looking until the beast was slain and its body destroyed.
Now hold it. Are you reading Daniel?
Yeah, you said 7, I think you maybe done 11 then.
Daniel 7:21.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
it's
what you were saying.
21, no, you said 7:11.
I got it.
I'm sorry. Daniel 7:21 through 22.
As I watched, this horn was wagging, war against the saints and the
It's waging war, actually. He was.
waging war against the saints and defeating them, until the Ancient of Days came and pronounced judgment in favor of the saints of the Most High. And the time came when they possessed the kingdom.
Okay, so he's waging war against the saints. And let's drop a couple verses down there and look at verses 25 through 27. Daniel 7:25 through 27.
He will speak against the Most High and oppress his saints, and try to change the set times and laws. The saints will be handed over to him for a time, times, and half a time.
So that's who he's waging war against. Antichrist is that war against the saints. So there are saints here, enough to make up nations. That's a lot of saints. And so there's a big divide during this time. And it's the saints against the satanic. And those that basically receive the mark of the beast will be under the satanic influence. And let's take a look at now what their destiny is. We know that in the end the saints win. But at this point, it doesn't look like they're winning at all, because they're not. Especially during this last 3.5 years, where it's just mentioned over and over about times and a half times stuff. But let's look at the destiny here for this situation. Revelations 19, 19 and 20.
And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse and against his army. And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that worshipped his image. These both were cast alive into a lake of the fire burning with brimstone.
Now, there's a lot said right there, and that's what happens in the end. At the end of the 3.5 year period, which is the end of the 7-year Great Tribulation period, what rescues the saints, and the saints are in need of rescue at this time, is Jesus coming back. And he's coming back with his army behind him. And the people on this earth that are part of the Antichrist armies, they think that they can fight against the oncoming Jesus Christ, King of Kings. But Jesus, with a word, the sword coming out of his mouth, destroys them. As far as all their deceptive works, judgment falls on them. Their time is up. And that's what actually releases their bondages from this world. and they're captive, and they're the head of the beast. The Antichrist is cast into the lake of fire. His great deceiver, false prophet, is cast into the lake of fire. The lake of fire is different from hell. The lake of fire is the final destiny of hell. Everybody in hell will get out of hell. They'll face judgment. But judgment after judgment is the lake of fire, which is the second death. That's the graveyard that is a monument in heaven. Some people don't believe there is a lake of fire, or that hell represents only the grave. And they're sadly deceived. They don't read their Bible very well, and they try to find translations that eliminate all these words. You have to eliminate a lot of verses to eliminate the lake of fire and what it says about that being eternal forever and ever. They mistranslate and try to retranslate a lot of words. I've actually talked to people that believe these things, who used to be Christians and are still Christians, but are, because of whether it's family or whatever the case may be, they've come to think that everybody will go to heaven and there's no such thing as hell. They can't believe that judgment actually has any purpose. Fact is that it's a monument. That's the reason why there is only one great tribulation, only one great rebellion, only one result of cause and effects of sin that'll last for eternity. So everybody, we all have a future choice. Everybody in the future will be able to make choices based on knowledge of what sin does. Satan didn't have that knowledge. He didn't know what sin would do. He didn't realize that sin would destroy everything he'd worked for and becoming so great in the kingdom. He didn't know that it would crush everything that he dreamed of, and he would be cast down in such a way that he would be completely destroyed. All his influences, all his beauty. So basically, the lake of fire has a purpose, and nobody ever gets out of the lake of fire. And this is one reason why I think these two go there first and early. They're the first ones into the lake of fire. The lake of fire wasn't created for them. It was created for Satan and his angels, fallen demonic spirits. That's what the Bible says. But these two are actually going there before any other angel or any other person goes. And we'll see that they're still there 1,000 years later, because those that do believe in this and still believe that they're temporary think that it's a refining process, that after you get yourself straightened up in the lake of fire, and then you come out and you're purified by fire. They mistranslated another verse. Fact is, the false prophet's a religious person. If he can't be purified in 1,000 years, he's never going to be purified. And we see that Revelations 20:10. Let's go ahead and read that. Revelations 20:10. See, they go in at the beginning of the millennial reign of Christ, at the end of the Great Tribulation.
And the devil that deceived them was cast in the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and forever.
So it's as plain as day there. I mean, in every translation, that's pretty clear that the false prophet's still there. The Antichrist is still there. His government is basically part of that. It's gone. The beast is gone. Jesus' kingdom will replace that. And they didn't get out. The devil will join them there 1,000 years later. He may be the first angel that actually goes there after they've been there already 1,000 years. The devil is an angel, a fallen angel. So, nobody gets out of the lake of fire. Let's take a look at Revelations 20, verses 1 through 3. We see that before the devil goes there, he's actually not going to the lake of fire, but instead found in a place called a pit. I believe the pit is in the center. It's like a black hole in the middle of hell, which is in the middle of the earth at this point. It's a multi-dimensional black hole where fallen angels are, and can be restrained. Where the devil goes, it's called the bottomless pit. It's different than hellfire, which is the gates of hell, where you see torment and stuff. So there's different places, different dimensions, different holding stations for different situations. Let's look at Revelations 20, 1 through 3.
And I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years, and cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till 1,000 years should be fulfilled, and after that he must be loosed a little Caesar.
And when I was younger and I first read that, I thought, why is he going to get out again? Why would that happen? And I wasn't really fully aware of these things anyway. I'm just reading through them and realizing, well, that's weird, that's odd. Why is he's locked up and then he gets out? Well, I believe I pretty well understand it now. I don't know if anybody fully understands all these things, but I understand quite a bit about it and the details as well as the big picture. And the fact is that there's going to be a lot of people born during the Great Tribulation. This is during the Great Tribulation he's locked up. And Satan has added a choice for everybody in heaven. You can either have Satan as your king, who was the devil, or you can have Jesus as your king, who was the King of Kings. I mean, Satan would be a fallen angel or an angel. Jesus is God. And so it's who you're gonna serve. And they had a choice, and they made a choice. And every angel made that choice before Adam was created. And then Adam was created to fulfill a new species. Actually, 2 new species would come out of that. Children of God, as well as others we'll look at later. Bottom line is that they made a choice. They had a choice. Now, during this time frame, there are a few humans that didn't have a choice yet. They wasn't old enough for the age of accountability, and they wasn't born, or they just never matured that way. So their soul never had personal sin and knowledge to be able to repent and make a choice. But everybody will make a choice. Nobody gets a free pass. And so at the end of the millennium, and David said that he's going to join his child who died at 7 or 8 days old, and David will go to the millennium and rule and reign with Jesus. And that's where he's going. The millennium is the kingdom of God here on earth. And David's child will be here. He'll grow up here. He'll be able to enter the age of accountability here. There's children that are born and fulfill the population, repopulate the earth during that time. I don't know all the details of how God's going to put all that population together. I do know that you could have a lot more population more efficiently than we have now. We have great land masses that are empty, and a lot of things that basically right now we could have better efficiency use of the land and living spaces and everything like that without being overpopulated. So I don't know what the population will reach during the millennium, but I know that there's going to be a lot of people that come out of the millennium, at the end of the millennium, that haven't made a choice yet. Now, everybody that goes into the millennium has made a choice. They have their names written in the Lamb's Book of Life. They are Christians in a sense. They are not part of the first resurrection. So they're not children of God. They've missed that opportunity. That opportunity ends the wedding feast of the Lamb. That's where the first resurrection is concluded. And the children of God is sealed forever, as that's his family that live with him in the New Jerusalem. And we'll get into all those things in future classes. Very soon we're going to be moving that direction. This is the last one on the millennium, on Great Tribulation, entering now into the millennium, and how this come together. So basically, there's a point where everybody's going to have a choice. And at the end of the millennium, those that hadn't made a choice yet will make a choice between Satan, who's just recently been released to deceive many, and he does deceive many, and they follow him. It's hard to believe that they would do that, because during the millennium, everything is going to be so good. It's going to be better than it's ever been. Prosperity is going to be high. People's death is going to be low. I mean, in fact, if you die 100 years old, you're considered accursed. That means capital punishment will be enforced. And during the end of the millennium, during the last 100 years, no doubt nobody will be born anymore. There'll be no more new people coming on earth, because everybody will be at the age of accountability. Everybody will have lived a life and everybody will be able to make a choice before the end of the millennium. And everybody that makes that choice will live the destiny of their choice. And so Satan is released, and he tells people, I will set you free from all these rules. And somehow multitudes of people follow him. And at the end, there's a rebellion. That's not the end of the millennium as far as God's kingdom. It's just the end of that time frame. And then all of a sudden the earth is destroyed. And they're all facing judgment seat, a great white throne judgment seat, after everybody's made a choice. So there's a purpose for his release. There's a purpose for the millennium. There's a purpose that humanoids continue. And that there's a repopulation of this earth, and Jesus does rule and reign. But it's an eternal kingdom. So we're going to get into a lot of those things in the upcoming classes starting when we come back after we're gone next week, the following week. We're going to start looking at the millennium and Jesus' return to earth and what that's going to be like. In the meantime, let's take a look at this Daniel, the progression of the kingdoms. Daniel 2, verses 32 through 35. And this is an image that we're pretty familiar with, that Nebuchadnezzar had in a dream. Daniel was able to interpret, and it talks about everything, the main events of the kingdoms, from Babylon to the Medes and the Persians, to the Greece, to the Romans, as we talk about the two Roman legs, still exist today. And then the feet and the toes, that's Daniel chapter 2. Daniel chapter 2, verses 32 and 35. And then we see the toes, the 10 toes of iron and clay. And then the rock that destroys it all. And then takes over, made without hands. Whoever's got that, go ahead and read that. Daniel 2, 32 through 35.
His image's head was of fine gold, his breasts and his arms of silver, his belly, his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. Thou sawest till that stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, break them to pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer thresh corns, and the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain, and filled the whole earth.
Okay, now that's a pretty symbolic picture of the whole history of the beast and its transformations, progressions, and how it's ending is it's going to be completely disintegrated as chaff is blown away in the wind. It's all temporary. That kind of government, that kind of kingdom is a temporary kingdom. Satanic kingdom is temporary. So whatever tribulations come across from that, they're temporary. But there is an eternal kingdom just waiting to come on board that's going to bless everybody. Let's take a look at a couple verses down from that, verses 44 through 45.
In the time of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed, nor will it be left to another people. It will crush all those kingdoms and bring them to an end, but it will itself endure forever. This is the meaning of the vision of the rock cut out of a mountain, but not by human hands, a rock that broke the iron. I'm sorry, I lost my place.
Go ahead to 45.
45, let me see here. The rock that broke the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold to pieces. The great God which has shown the king what will take place in the future. The dream is true and the interpretation is trustworthy.
So, this is the eternal kingdom. So even after Satan's rebellion, who takes a good part of this population, he doesn't take the kingdom. And at the end of the world, it's not the end of the kingdom. So the millennial reign of Christ is actually the beginning of God's kingdom Not just at God's kingdom here on earth, but God's kingdom, period. Forever. Beyond this earth. To the next world. To the next earth. To the next New Jerusalem. Throughout the universes, throughout eternity. That's just the beginning. That's sort of like the honeymoon for his bride. We're going to go to the earth for 1,000 years and have a honeymoon. And then I'm going to take you home. And we're going to rule and reign together. Now you're ruling and reign on this earth, but yet it's not going to end. It's just going to continue to get better and better. And let's take a look at Daniel chapter 7, verses 13 through 14. And all these things from these previous kingdoms, the satanic beasts, will be dissolved. They'll just be a memory. They'll be history. They're recorded in the Bible. They're not going to be forgotten, but they're not going to be deceptive anymore. The deceiver will be gone. The misunderstandings will be gone. Deceptions and ideas of sin will be recognized that it's bad, and we won't be calling what's evil good anymore, and what's good evil anymore. There'll be no the word I'm looking for. I draw a blank sometimes, especially here. It's I had this word earlier. It's
I saw in the night vision, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the ancient days, and they brought him near before him, and there was given him dominion and glory and kingdom, that all people, nations, languages should serve him. His dominion is the everlasting domain, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that shall not be destroyed.
So that's a pretty conclusive thing in another section of Daniel. And the word I was actually looking for is ignorance. Kept eluding me for a minute there. There's no ignorance in heaven. Everything's going to be understood. It's forever. Jesus' kingdom is forever. It's a kingdom of truth, not ignorance. He doesn't like half-truths. He doesn't like hiding truths. He doesn't like sweeping things under the carpet. He likes everything out in the open, seeing clear. That's what the light does. It puts things in the light, it puts things in the open, helps us see clearly what's going on. Darkness is where we get all this ignorance from. I didn't understand that because I didn't understand these things. I didn't see that. Whatever the case is, all these things will be gone in the future. Now it's a progression in heaven. God's always doing new things. He says, behold, I'm doing new things. So there's going to be growth. There's new creations in heaven after this, after us. There's more beyond us than there is behind us, because it's eternal. And somewhere the first angel was created, I believe, to be Satan. Now God was way beyond that. He's eternal. He has no being. But somewhere was the first creation, the first angel. And then there was this time transpired where heaven developed all these kingdoms of angels. And then come Adam. And then God's kingdoms will take the place of the satanic kingdoms. And then we got forever beyond that. And when you got forever beyond that, even if you got unlimited understanding of how many grains of sand there is in the seashore, and that's past history, you have to count all those grains plus all the planets, everything in the future, and you wouldn't approach forever in the future. So the creations of the future will be greater than the creations of the past. Just a number and time in the future. There's no end to it. So we have a great time to look forward to. God's got new things planned for us. We'll never exhaust him. And his plans are special. This is a special time. This is a time of evil, knowing good and evil. That's the reason why it's so bad. It'll never be this bad after this time frame goes. This time's going to get worse and worse, although we're going to have revivals and great awakenings. I do strongly believe that's the next thing in God's agenda, is a great awakening for our world, for our country. I don't think it's going to happen in my lifetime. I don't know if it's even going to happen in our children's lifetime. There's so much, and we're so far away from the truth. We'd have to have a complete turnaround in our country and start getting back to the truth. We're so deceived in many ways, in every area almost. We've gone into some of those things. Even the church is not unified, but in the next great awakening, it will be unified in biblical truth. They'll realize that Jesus did die. It was 3 days and 3 nights in the tomb. Therefore, he didn't die on Good Friday. He died on Preparation Day, as the Bible says, on all 4 Gospels, which is Wednesday. We know that there's only one way to heaven, asking Jesus in your heart. You don't need to be baptized, and you're not predestinated to do that. He gives everybody a chance to go to heaven. He chooses to have you have an opportunity. If you don't have an opportunity in this lifetime, he chooses to have you have an opportunity in the millennium. And I believe that's very clear. And so all these things will be clear and be honored as truth as far as how we get saved. The fact is, Jesus did die on the cross. He spent, just as he said, 3 days and 3 nights in the tomb. And those truths will be unified. Now, I mean, there may be little differences, but we got to get even the basics unified before we're actually empowered. People don't really believe the Bible right now because there's so many interpretations. They say, well, that's your idea. Well, the fact is, everybody's got an idea, but that doesn't make it true. There is a single absolute truth, and the Bible's full of it, and full of the truths that we need to know. And so I do believe in the next great awakening. That's the foundation. It's prayer, God's manifestation of his Holy Spirit, which is the great counselor who will teach us truths from his word. We'll see that these truths will become a great light. They'll drive out the darkness, the deception. Anyway, I'm looking forward to that, but I don't think I'll see it while I'm here. I mean, my time is very limited. But the bottom line is that the more I look around, there's little signs of things that could happen that are encouraging. But there's so many more signs that makes me think, how could we ever get to this point in the last 50 years from where we was 50 years ago, or was even 20 years ago? What's across the TVs, the medias, and stuff like that, it's mind-boggling. So we do need a great awakening, and that's what God wants. Before he comes back, he's coming back for a victorious church. I believe that's very clear in the Bible. He's not coming back to rescue the church as he does in his second coming when the church is under the Antichrist attack. Right now, the church is the one that holds back the Antichrist. We know that the millennium doesn't happen according to what we've seen in earlier classes for probably another 200 years according to God's calendar. We know there's a lot of things on God's calendar, so we have a lot of time. The temple is going to be built, and that's going to be the fig tree coming back. The fig tree is not the nation Israel, it is the temple in Israel. And then that starts a 120-year time clock. We know that that's the prophetic generation. Those things are conclusive. They're indisputable when you see them. So after the temple's built, you have a 120-year time clock. So we have a lot of time for a great awakening. And the thing is, we need to be able to have the heart to receive truth and to be corrected if we're wrong. I know I want to be corrected if I'm wrong, and I appreciate that. So God bless you all. It's time to go ahead and close unless we have any questions. Is there any questions anybody has?
Anybody have a question?
Go ahead.
I just have a statement.
Sure.
We are extremely, you can even begin to think how happy we are. Last week while we were in church in Maryland, the minister came around, nobody leaves. He has a witness on him. He walked up and said, depending on the agreement of everybody, they're considering not having church on Sunday.
What day was they going to have
Can
church?
you imagine?
Well, they're not going to have church on Sunday. When are they going to have church then?
Right?
And
They're
then
not.
that period, they're going to close?
Yeah.
Well, during COVID, a lot of places did close.
Well, and he was touching me because I'm not a member, but I sure. No.
Now, there are some people that,
He said, you're not a member, you don't have to raise your hand. Minister us saw because he said, visitors can raise their hand when I put it a little higher.
now, there are some people that, yeah, well, there's some people that have a budget problem or something.
What's the purpose?
Well, some people actually think it's wrong to worship on Sunday and they worship on Saturday, Seventh-day Adventist. But if you read my book, the last chapter explains that we're set free from the Sabbath laws. And the fact is that Jesus rose on Sunday. The Pentecostal church Pentecost was on Sunday. A lot of things happen on Sunday, and that's what we celebrate. But we can worship on any day. But if you close the church, that's a sad thing. So we're going to go ahead and close this live version here. God bless you all. See you in 2 weeks.